10 to bring teas into one place. Carl Henry Global has employed over 150 people through the gig economy in recent years. Therefore, we have the ability to support multiple multimedia and multilingual projects across our 5 core operating areas, which are finance, real estate, internet, corporate and lifestyle. We also offer 3 service levels. These are show you, with you, and for you. This offers the flexible support level you need when you need it.
The objective is to get more developers building the ecosystem on Cardano. Okay. Let's make it easy for them. Language barriers. One barrier to entry for Ethereum-based developers is learning the Haskell and Plutus languages. The answer would be to give the main code blocks for popular applications fully ready to use. This would allow the developers get a basic application up and running on the blockchain quickly. Then instructions could be given showing how to customize the user experience, look and feel. If additional functionality is required, they could hire a Haskell/Plutus developer to finish the work, which would be more efficient in time and finances.
Basic code templates. As there are only a limited number of application types, it should also be possible to give complete basic templates for each. For example, standalone wallet, browser wallet DEX, NFT platform, retail point of sale, online contracts with different features, stablecoin, etc. Customizable platform. Another approach would be to create a foundation framework, like an open source content management system for websites, where modules could be uploaded to increase and add certain functionality.
Developer contracting platform. The other way to build the number of applications operating on the Cardano blockchain is to create an easy way for people to contract with trained developers in the crypto space. Some people have more money than time or skills. These people may be very creative or recognize a problem to solve, so a platform similar to Upwork or Fiverr would facilitate the link-up and development of multiple ideas and projects.
In the next 3 months, our primary objectives are: build a website platform to demonstrate the various code blocks and modules. Build a directory of Haskell and Plutus developers, target 500 developers. Start publishing standardized application models and modules for the main types of applications. Develop online multilingual documentation, English plus 3 others. Build a multilingual contractors platform to link up employers and developers on the Cardano ecosystem. Thank you for watching our proposal.
Hi, Randall Harmon here. Today it's legacy databases to blockchain. You know, for many years we've been building applications using traditional relational database management systems and document databases and just building web-based software to access them. And there are thousands of these legacy applications, and we don't have cut and dried recipes for connecting those applications to the blockchain. We can write a smart contract to enable payment for those off-chain applications, but I wanted to do something that would create a deeper connection with the blockchain and enable the state of an off-chain application to be brought on-chain and to get the kind of assurances so that we can prove later the state of some data that existed in that application at a moment in time that was captured in an on-chain transaction, without that on-chain transaction actually capturing any private information. And there's a lot of technical details around the proposal that I've written here, and honestly, I don't expect it's possible to describe all of them in the time allotment that we have for this presentation, but I wanted to share some of these high-level ideas around integrating databases with blockchain. It's not just about payments, and it's not just about anchoring the state of that database so that you can prove later what content was in it. There's also other applications like being able to give a cryptographically verifiable receipt to a customer and have that customer be able to verify that receipt is true according to the zero knowledge information that was already posted to the blockchain. These kinds of smart contracts and these kinds of utility that blockchains enable are really exciting to me, because it lets us add a layer that isn't just about the purity of blockchain and Web3, but is really about bringing together the technology that we've been doing in the quote-unquote regular world for so long, and not pretending that only the pure applications are suitable for blockchain. And that's why I have written this proposal. It's a research project. We have to go find all the patterns and experiment, and we don't know exactly where we're going to end up, but we know it's important enough of a problem to go and work hard on it and report back to the community on what we've learned and tell about the open source software that can be combined in useful ways to deliver valuable results. And so that's all about our legacy databases to blockchain proposal. We are going to implement this using the Gimbal Labs project-based learning program, and I want to encourage you to come join our Discord, come and join our weekly playground sessions, and learn more about Gimbal Labs and this project, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Hi, Randall Harmon here, and today we're talking about trust. Smart contract trust, smart contract labeling, and transparency. That's our proposal in Fund 6, where we recognize that the behaviors of our smart contracts are not easy to understand, even for developers. And when we extend that to end users, I foresee a very real problem with lack of user confidence that's going to limit general adoption. We only have to look to our first and second generation blockchains to see that adoption is not a guarantee. A small subset of humanity is actually using these first and second generation blockchains, and we want to change that. We want to bring 80% of people to Cardano, and that happens only when Cardano is a blockchain that people can trust. And of course, there are lots of projects in our ecosystem that are working to, create scalability and performance, and those are going to be really good movers of the trust metric. But transparency, to me, is the number one non-technical input to that trust equation. Transparency, letting people know ahead of time what they can expect from the smart contracts they're going to interact with. And so we're going to create assurance standards for Cardano wallets to display human-readable promises and safeguards that people can expect before they send their money into smart contracts. This is a research project. We're going to develop recommendations for all of our developers and wallet authors so that these transparent human-readable labels can be displayed at the right moment during their user journey. We really want to send a clear picture to the world that Cardano is a place where people can transact together more safely than they can on any other blockchain. We're delivering trust signals to end users. This is fundamentally a research project, and It's going to be conducted through the Gimbal Labs project-based learning process, where we are both gaining experience and expertise, developing people so that there are more experts about blockchain technology and Cardano in specific. And this research project is really all about data structures that are on-chain already, that need to be on-chain in order for us to reliably connect contract requirements to the contract code, and to form those data structures that represent those clear user-facing expectations in a way that is conducive to the user experience that shows up in the wallet. And the wallet integration is actually a significant part of our project, in that that's the moment where the rubber meets the road, where these 80% of end users, 80% of humanity that we want to bring onto the Cardano blockchain, that's where they're going to see what they can expect from their smart contracts. And we don't know exactly where this research will lead, but we are ready and committed to all of the guidance and providing data schemas and improvement proposals. It's really for us whatever it takes to ensure that Cardano becomes the best trusted blockchain available. I invite you to
to do something as so that we can accomplish. It gives me purpose.
Check. Pretty sure it's working. Yes. Yeah, so there's definitely some lag with the internet kind of low, so it looks like it's about to start. Nice. There's like little items you can collect in here, and then later on they're going to email details about the NFTs that you can get from it. So,
Hi everybody, and greeting from London. I know everybody must be excited about all the announcements that have already been made, and many more to follow. We have some exciting news ourselves to share, and although the title of this talk is probably going to give away a lot, before I reveal everything, I would like to talk a little bit about wallets. So when we look at all the money or currencies that is associated with blockchains on public addresses, you can inherently know that these addresses have corresponding private keys, or passwords if you wish, to spend that money. The ability to spend that money and securely storing your private keys happens within a wallet. So you can imagine that the $2.2 trillion worth of cryptocurrencies are stored in some wallets in some way, shape or form. In this way, the typical assumption that wallets are merely intended to send and receive monies and view your balance is mute. It was in the early days of cryptocurrencies that you needed to have the complete copy of the blockchain in order to actually see the balance that was associated with your wallet. However, Satoshi envisioned a new type of wallet which would later be called the light wallet. Now, the goal of the light wallet is to have universal accessibility for everybody, regardless of the infrastructure that you have at your disposal. An almost inevitable consequence of making wallets lighter was the adoption of blockchain technologies on mobile phone and the start of making UI and UX better and easier for everyone. Looking at the growth of blockchain adoption, we can't fail to observe the enormous growth in wallet diversity. In recent years, we've seen an increasing diversity growing from simple swap functions to NFTs to over-collateralized loans, voting, yield farming, or even self-repaying loans. Those dApps have become increasingly more sophisticated and tailored towards an expert audience. By the way, if none of these previous mentioned features mean anything to you, please do stick around. Because in the end, we know that when technology reaches its saturation points for all the experts or early adopters, then the question inevitably arises, how do we make this accessible to all? So let's start thinking about this question. What is needed to make these products accessible to all? What are the gaps? As a product person, I always ask myself why people are doing what they're doing and what motivates them, and how can we do better? First and foremost, we need to make it easier for the majority of the people. Things like yield farming, UTXOs, epochs, or even delegation is detailed information that is not necessarily accessible to everybody, and we need to do better to make it more accessible. When we really look at everything that's in the market, and there is a lot, we need to come to the conclusion that we can't build everything for everyone. That means that we need to start thinking about modular wallets. We need to have core wallet features and then allow the user to decide what is important to them. We need to have some sort of a dApp store that the user can select what kind of dApps they want. When we open up the dApp store for developers to publish their dApps on it, we need to have some form of identity so that both the user and the developer can know and trust each other. So this means that we need to start having a notion of self-sovereign identity. You are the only one that controls your assets in the same way that you own your identity. You should be able to share and revoke access to it. On top of that, when we send money to friends, we don't want to scan a QR code or type in an address. We want to type in a name and transfer the money to the person without worrying about it. The same thing goes for voting. It's one person, one vote, and your identity is important in that. And yes, in the end of the day, when you do your taxes, the taxman needs to have your identity in order to prove your ownership. All of this needs to be core concepts within the wallet. Last but not least, security in your wallets. In your wallets are your funds, the identity you have, the art you bought. In essence, it's a representation of yourself within the blockchain system. This means that we need to go through extraordinary measures to secure the self. For this reason, we need to have hardware integration into the security, but try to do it in a non-invasive way. We can't have a trade-off between usability and security too much. But I don't want to keep this presentation as simply my musings around what I think the Light Wallet needs to look like. We actually need to start mapping out how these needs look like. Now bear with us, it's early days and we've decided to call this project Project One, as in one wallet, one world for everyone. Many hours have already been spent on this, and lots of people from both inside and outside the community have shared their insights with us. And I would like to personally thank each and every one of them for their contributions. So without further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague Dan, who's going to present on the collective inputs that we've gathered from all of them. Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Alex. Hey everyone, I'm Dan Smith, broadcasting live from warm sunny London. Let's jump straight into Project One.
As Alex said, Project One is still in its early development phase and it's evolving at a rapid pace. As well as being light, fast and simple to use, we've taken a modular product approach, utilizing both community and internally built products unified in one experience. Product One will truly be the go-to platform for a large user base. The journey begins when you download the Project One extension from your browser. We learned that our community wants to understand product features, fees, and the security in place as early as possible so they can make an informed decision to whether the product is right for them. So we created intro screens that provide all of this information as soon as you launch the extension for the first time. You'll then need to set up your wallet, name it, create a spending password, and back up your 24-word passphrase. Once you've done that, you're ready to enter your Project One wallet. From your wallet, you'll be able to connect to dApps within our ecosystem. Yes, that means jumping into DEXs like SundaySwap or ADAX to swap your favorite tokens. You'll be using platforms like Artano and TNFT to mint or purchase NFTs. How about Liquid or Meld to lend and borrow? The innovation taking place in our ecosystem is amazing, and we're really enjoying seeing the unique projects released from the community. From the extension, you'll be able to delegate, view your activity, send, receive, and store not only native Cardano assets, but also Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and more. Project One will be a multi-token wallet. Interoperability is something we've always strived to achieve, and we'll be bringing these capabilities to Project One. Now, if that wasn't enough, the product really comes to life when you hit the Launch App button, which opens the web app, the full Light Wallet experience, enabling access to Cardano's entire ecosystem. By default, you'll land onto the crypto page. Here, we'll provide you with an overview of your balance, delegation rewards, token balances, recent activity, along with charts and graphs that display historical data, portfolio performance, and more. Selecting a specific token opens its subpage, which displays your balance, recent transactions, price history, and an alternative way for you to send. Now, let's talk NFTs. We've seen what you creators have been up to in the Cardano space, and frankly, we're blown away. Space Buds, Rhino Generation, Claymates, Cardano Bits, Cardano Kids, the list goes on. The creativity in this space is already heating up, and we're super excited to see the upcoming projects landing on Cardano. So we're happy to reveal that Project One will feature a page dedicated to your collectibles. Let's take a look. Here you'll see all your NFTs in your wallet displayed in a simple gallery view. For you NFT whales that have quite the portfolio, you'll have search and filtering functionality so you can find the NFT you're after. Opening one of the NFTs will take you to a subpage which provides further information about the asset, including date it was minted, owner address, and metadata. From here, you'll also be able to send your NFT. Okay, let's navigate over to activity. The activity page provides you with your entire transaction and rewards history. One of the main features the community felt was missing from wallets is the ability to download your transaction history in CSV format. So you'll be pleased to know that we've added that functionality right here in Project One. You'll also be able to search transactions and filter by date ranges, specific tokens, and rewards. Opening up a selected transaction will provide you with added information such as the send from, to addresses, timestamps, transaction hash, and metadata. The Delegation Center is a new approach to how we showcase stake pools. We've learned that we need to design a system that provides an experience that ultimately enables users to make a more informed decision when choosing a pool to delegate to. We achieve this by providing filter and sorting functionality of pools based on your own preferences. We also have a category section so delegators can select the pool category that resonates with their interests. Whether it's art, mission-driven, country-specific, educational, or business-related, there's something for everyone. We've learned that this approach will help provide a more meaningful delegation experience to the community. And for those who are unsure about what pool to delegate to and need a helping hand, the featured pool section provides a selection of our recommended pools. We also learned that there needs to be more education on how staking works on Cardano, how pools are ranked, and how much delegators can potentially earn. So we've included a section not only within the Delegation Center with articles, tools, and guides, but we have an entire page dedicated to learning. Selecting a stake pool opens the subpage with further information about the pool, its performance details, and social links. From the stake delegation panel, you can enter the amount of ADA you want to delegate and start earning. Or, with multiple delegation baked in, you'll be able to delegate to multiple pools, which provides diversification and also helps to further decentralize the network. Let's check out the dApp store. Now, if you're a dApp developer, this is where you'll want your product to be listed. The dApp store is your gateway to the dApp ecosystem. You'll be able to search specific projects, navigate through our category section, filter through projects based on your preferences, and explore our new popular and trending dApp sections created by us. Selecting one of the dApps opens the subpage which contains further information such as a detailed description, creator info, statistics, and direct access to the dApp itself. Once on your chosen dApp, simply connect to your wallet in one click. Simplifying the blockchain for mass adoption is a mission that drives our organization. This is why identity and privacy are two major focus points for us. Our concept for the Identity Center puts you in control of your personal data right inside the wallet. You'll be able to share and request credentials, control who can see what details, and revoke access at any time. By utilizing these capabilities from Prism, you'll be able to instantly prove your identity in a single click, allowing you to skip past the often long-winded KYC process when interacting with dApps that require it. And finally, let's go over to voting. Each ADA holder is a voice in our ecosystem. Your holdings give you voting power. Don't forget that participating in the governance is rewarded, giving you the unique opportunity to decide about the future of Cardano whilst earning rewards. Our vision for the Voting Center allows the community to participate in the governance of Cardano by voting on improvements and new project proposals directly from Project One. As mentioned earlier, Project One is moving at a rapid pace. We'll continue to work with the community to create the best user experience possible for this product. So please do watch this space for further development on Project One.
And that's all for now. I'd like to give a massive shout out to those from the community that took part in our interview and testing sessions. If you'd like to take part in these sessions, please reach out to the community team. Until next time, cheers.
Cardano NFTs have been a big involvement for the community lately, ever since the release of native tokens. We've seen a lot of fascinating projects sprouting up and massive involvement in things like Catalyst. What we aim to do and get out there with is deliver a new collectible system and other means in order to use these NFTs. NFTs have many use cases, and we're seeing them more and more out there in the community, from marketplaces to creators, artists, to video games, and also the tying of NFTs to physical objects. NFTs present a new dynamic for us to use in order to do things that couldn't be done before in new and exciting ways that are more efficient using blockchain. NFTs, as we see them right now in the ecosystem, is more in the collectible art space. I like to call this level 1. We think of these things as collectibles, and we know they have more use cases. But what we're seeing now is the exploration of how these can be used, what they're tied to, and how these sort of systems can grow and evolve. This has come from marketplaces like Token, CNFT, and others that have shown that with a marketplace, you're not just constrained to buying and selling. You're also looking at creators having a good hub and a way to reach their community and the world itself, and also for different features and different ways to expand on how NFTs get distributed. An interesting way to do this is through auctions. We are all exploring secondary markets, and also how these NFTs can be integrated into other things like blockchain games. Blockchain games with NFTs is a very exciting concept, where if we think of something like World of Warcraft, or we think of something like racing, you can take an NFT that's tied to something, whether it be a weapon, a skin, or something of that nature, and you can take it to market. But with Cardano and blockchains itself, you're not restricted to keeping that item, that NFT, within that marketplace. You're allowed to take it to other places to increase that exposure. So what you're doing is creating opportunity for yourself as a seller, reaching new fan bases, and you're creating opportunity for that game as well, where people are going to wonder, what does this go to? Or, that's cool, I've got to check this out. And that's what the Cardano ecosystem and community is all about. Expansion, adoption, familiarity, and growing the base. What we're seeing more and more are these drops coming out, and people are getting very creative with how to do it. If we look at wallets, we don't quite have the Web 3.0 wallet yet, but the community itself has rallied together to put together ways for you to buy these in ADA, ways to combine these with fiat options to on-ramp people, and how these can be absorbed, these orders can be made, and then in the end how the funds are distributed, whether back to a bidder or to a creator doing the exchange handoff. We know the exchange handoff is going to get easier with the use of smart contracts, but in the meantime we have to look at what the community has done to overcome these, where they've used escrow services, they've used Discord, and they've been able to take something like what would be basically done with a smart contract and innovate on that. Building a community using Cardano and NFTs on something like Discord is incredibly valuable. It brings people together in a way that they can interact. Projects can show off what they've got. New people can come in asking questions and learn. And it's like a one-stop shop where you can use the marketplace and you can use the Discord, and it builds that familiarity. Then if we look at social media uses, I see drops all the time happening on Twitter, Reddit, and others. What we see on Twitter is a lot like how we see Project Catalyst. People come out with their projects, they run them, and people critique the good and bad. Did the drop go smoothly? Did the site manage to survive that many hits? And we're seeing people refine and build. Like CNFT just completed a migration to upgrade their system. Now they can handle massive amounts of traffic, more creators, and more drops. That's very exciting to see because that shows Cardano and our community's ability to scale. Scalability is one of our founding factors. What we do in NFTs is going to pave the way for how these things evolve. The world doesn't completely understand what an NFT is or what it's useful for, or other things that they can do with it. And by taking these first steps, we're showing not only can we compete with other platforms that are out there and get into the NFT industry as it exists, but we're a hungry ecosystem and we yearn to grow and expand. And that's very exciting in itself. I see that before too long, we're going to see more and more things popping up on places like Catalyst, where we're going to see people get funding for more innovative things as we come up with NFT staking, as NFT yield farming, and we look at dApps and we look at marketplaces and such as Spores, Move Network, and others. We're also exploring partnerships throughout the NFT industry to get Cardano out there to capture that new user base, where they may not be too happy with Ethereum fees. Polygon is just there, or they might just be looking to do something more creative or innovative, so that we can serve both the people that are Cardano fans and also the people that are looking for these pieces and love to collect them. That's a very exciting thing in this ecosystem, where luckily this is the kind of community that doesn't go after each other, but instead tries to form an ecosystem in a way for everyone to work together. What might be beneficial for one can be beneficial for others, either through primary markets, creator campaigns, different NFT drops, or just different formats. You may have one marketplace where it's a poster, another marketplace where it's a Pokemon card looking item, and another where it's a 3D virtual reality or augmented reality environment for people to set up, either seeing it in the living room or being able to sit back with a headset and enjoy their gallery. It's also important to think of how we can include others in these things that we come up with and these new innovative features. From there, I see this expanding. NFTs can be used for a variety of things, like I've mentioned. One in particular is anti-counterfeiting. Another can be used with track and trace. With anti-counterfeiting, you can show the NFT and it can contain the data of where it came from the ground, manufacturing, to your hands. With track and trace, you can pretty much do the same thing, but you can also show the life cycle of that product as well, where an NFT could be passed on from consumer to consumer. These are just a few examples of where NFTs can go, and I'm very excited to see where our community, where IOHK and the Cardano Foundation and Emergo can take this in the future.
Us, let's say, the Cardano Nation, an opportunity to create our nation from the ground up, with new rules, with new laws. Please let us know how these rules would improve our lives as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Michaela. Yes, so just as a brief recap, we're working with the Marshall Islands on issuing the first legal tender crypto, basically, and also creating a special economic zone there. And your question is right on point. Why would we do that? So, you know, I started as a coder. It was at an very early stage in my life. And what every coder knows is that it's much easier to start fresh with a blank slate than to start and maintain like a bunch of spaghetti legacy code. So I think we're trying now to start from a blank slate and reimagine how a society can operate. I'm not even saying a nation state because we don't even, you know, it could work for any type of organization, but also for a nation state. The Marshall Islands is a nation state. and we have a
and creative space. I'm chairing this panel. My name's Gillian Tett. I'm chair of the editorial board of the Financial Times in America. I'm chairing this panel really to learn because I spent years of my life writing about finance and financial markets. I've recently been looking a lot at how decentralized technologies are creating distributed finance and the whole rise of blockchain, all the exciting innovations there, fascinating innovations. But I've not looked much at the world of art and creativity before, but this, of course, is one area where it's absolutely exploding. And I think there's a growing recognition amongst mainstream audiences that this is potentially going to change a lot of the way that the art and creative businesses work, but there's not much understanding about what it actually means in practice. So we have a group of people today who are going to be telling us in detail about what the opportunities are, what the risks are, and what their vision is. We have Misan Hariman, who's the chair of the South Bank Centre, who's a Nigerian-born British photographer, entrepreneur, and social activist. We've got Janet Adams, who's Chief Operating Officer at Singularity NET, which is the world's leading decentralized AI network, who's an expert on artificial intelligence and disruptive tech advocate, and she's extremely interested in how this is going to be changing a lot of these fields. And Sofiane Deliou, who's the CEO and founder of New Life AI, a decentralized social network which is basically trying to aggregate cultural innovators and produce a data set for design and aesthetics trends. So a number of people are looking at this from different perspectives and hopefully at the very cutting edge of these new trends. But let me start perhaps with you, Misan, and ask you, how do you see these innovations changing your job as a photographer and as someone who's also working at an institution that's trying to advance creativity in the UK ecosystem?
Thank you, Gillian, and it's great to be with everyone here. For me, as an artist, as a storyteller, I have been collecting digital art since 2013. So I have been laughed out of the room and laughed at many dinner parties of why I collect JPEGs. And I'm so glad that the ability to irrevocably prove scarcity and provenance through minting one's art on the blockchain has finally arrived. Why is it so important? From my point of view, it's important for many simple points. The ability to prove scarcity, so anyone can see what amount of work you've minted on the blockchain and who owns it and what it was sold for. But purely from an artist's point of view, if I sell one of my photographs, for example, I sold a photograph last year with Sotheby's, and if that collector decides to resell it, I will receive 0 pennies on the secondary market. And the ability for smart contracts to have a 15 or 20% built-in royalty in perpetuity is a revolutionary act in itself. You can imagine the amount of artists that don't even need to think about who's buying their work, because they know they will receive a fair royalty as the value of their work goes hopefully up over the months and years. So I think from an artist's point of view, the ability to have a borderless range of collectors with no real gatekeepers, so people are buying your work for the merit-based talent that you have, and you don't need to go and beg a curator to tell the world that your work is good enough. And that's extraordinary in this space. So number one, provenance, proof of scarcity. Number two, an inbuilt royalty structure. And number three, the gatekeepers of old you don't live and die by them. in this new age. And I think that's an incredible moment. You know, imagine the Picassos or the Gordon Parks or the Jackson Pollocks of this world that never were heard or seen because they were born in Venezuela or my country of birth, Nigeria. Well, now they can be seen, and we have a community of like-minded people with liquidity that will support great art.
Well, I think it's a really fascinating point to stress, because I must say, in the popular media, you know, insofar as NFTs in the art world were initially discussed, it was primarily in terms of, gee whiz, people are creating stuff in digital space, and that's kind of weird. The actual issues around the distribution factor and the provenance and the control it's giving to artists wasn't getting much play in the way it was talked about. Why do you think that was? Is it because it's just a very difficult message to communicate to people because it seems so alien? I mean, it's not the kind of thing the Daily Mail is writing a lot about, is it?
No, well, you know, how many people, if you go to a dinner party or wedding, I will sit down and say, how many people in this room know what an NFT is? We're in an embryonic stage of this, very, very early days, and it's just beginning to make sense to people. But I'm 43, and I grew up loving video games and anime and collecting things anyway. So the idea that my behavior is moving from IRL in real life to the digital realm it's just something I'm very comfortable with. And if you think that most of us view most things right now on a device, it isn't actually a huge ask for people to recognize art on a device. So it's a cognitively thing where, you know, the human mind takes a little bit of time to recognize that this Web.3 is a thing, and people can have careers building metaverses, collectible art, IP, and other things in this new technology.
Right. Sofiane, how is it playing out for you? Tell us how you're using this new technology.
Right, thank you so much for the question. And yeah, I completely align with a lot of things that Nissan just said. So I have a background in the creative economy, let's say, for the last 20 years online. I started with a ringtone company, so that was kind of at that time where, you know, most of the content coming from like music labels and films were being shared on peer-to-peer networks, you know, back in the time of Casa and BitTorrent and so on. And so the only thing that people would be willing to pay for was the ringtones, because the format was making it very difficult in the old phones. And then I moved into the fashion industry, and I've been running a magazine that was the most visited fashion platform in France, with like millions of visitors, and we work with top tier brands. And here the model was, the content is free, but you have to watch advertising basically, and this very weird relationship between, you know, advertised editorials versus the content that creators really did because they love it. You know, you have this thing in fashion where, and actually in every form of creativity, where sometimes you do things out of passion and sometimes you do it because you need to pay the bills. And so in this media model, I think that component was missing to actually deliver a model where, because at the end of the day, consumers are starting to realize that when they watch content and they consume content on social media and so on, they end up paying for it in the form of, you know, clicking on ads and then buying the things that the advertisers are pushing through, you know, algorithms and so on. So why do we actually need to pay for those products that then, you know, by cascade pay the content creators, and why not having more direct models? So that's one first area. I would say the second major advantage of NFTs is that you can actually produce an equivalent of, you know, art galleries and real estate on the blockchain. So NFTs can be used for units of creativity, but it can be used to anything that's scarce and unique, and that's the thing that is missing in the digital space, because since files can replicate indefinitely, it's very difficult to actually assign a value to one file, and so that's what NFTs are here for. And what I find very interesting is the way you can connect NFTs to licensing models. So that's something we are working on, where you could define a certain amount of rights that could be derived, so the content can stay free and open for everyone. But if you want to use it for commercial purpose, for example, you would have the choice between different NFTs that give you proof of, and it reduces the barrier to entry to all these kind of businesses that are today surrounded by, agencies and lawyers and contracts and all these things that make it very unpractical for a company to buy a property, an IP that is worth less than $5,000. And in the same reason that blockchain has democratized crowdfunding for startups, NFTs are also offering new ways to perform much smaller transactions that could produce some kind of launch pad for a lot of creators, beginners, and getting into this creative economy with this new form of acceleration of community-driven prize discovery. I think that's an area that's very interesting for us.
Right. Well, it's fascinating. I want to turn later on come back to you, ask you some more concrete examples of how this is playing out and what the challenges are. But before I do, Janet, you have an overview of the system more broadly. Has the speed of change surprised you? And where do you see it going in the next year or so?
Well, it has been an unprecedented, interesting time in human history over the last 2 years. And certainly with NFTs and the growing popularity of NFTs, they have really taken off and grown in popularity in the last 6 months. As we have completed the infrastructures for NFTs and some of the big marketplaces become mature, like OpenSea and Nifty Gateway. And we're really seeing some very, very strong market dynamics at play in the digital art space. And where do I see it going? I see us now entering a golden age of computational creativity. Through COVID-19, we've all learned to interact much more with the online world. Museums have been closed, and art galleries have been closed, and a new form of creativity is exploding with NFTs. And it's really interesting how the human and technology interplay is playing out here, because if I walk down the street, even here I'm in Dubai at the moment, or in London where I live, or wherever, there's so much uniformity in how people present themselves and how they do their hair and their makeup and clothes. Go into an online metaverse and there's so much more creativity being expressed, and humans are expressing themselves online in open and more creative ways. So I see an ongoing growth of the NFT industry, and that's purely from a human creativity perspective. The economical aspects and the breaking down of the old value systems, the removal of the gateway, the decentralization, the right for people, communities, to define the value of an individual or a robot's contribution instead of having that defined by a select group of people is one of the most important and fundamental shifts in humanity. And it allows us now to value our own contributions and to be valued in a much more open-hearted, less biased, more inclusive, more authentic fashion. So all of these features, together with the explosion of the artificial intelligence revolution and the ongoing improvements in NFT availability. For example, we're all super excited that Cardano smart contracts went live successfully at the weekend. This really opens up NFTs on Cardano with reasonable gas fees, so I see this entire area continuing to drive not just an economy, not just a decentralized movement, not just a new form of art and creativity and human expression, but a new stage of evolution of humankind as we evolve with our robotic and artificial intelligence and our digital creations.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, the vision is obviously extraordinary, not just in terms of the way it changes power structures in the creative industries, but also the potential creativity it can unleash as well. But in terms of practical tangibilities, I mean, Misan, can you tell us, have you actually created any NFTs yet, and actually, had, kept provenance of them as they change hands?
I'm one of those people that everyone keeps asking, when are you doing a drop? When are you dropping your collection? And I will be, possibly before the end of the year. But for me, I'm lucky. I'm a really well-known artist, and I've had so much visibility. My interest is for me to support those voices that have not been heard. So I've been collecting a ton of NFTs and looking at multiple platforms and understand how these communities are built. Deep in the recesses of Discord and NFT Twitter, as we call it, there's some incredible stories of artists that are born on Cardano, the platform where I found it cheapest to acquire art, and where artists have found it very easy to build communities. There are issues with something called gas, which is really a mining tax on Ethereum, which has been incredibly expensive and stopping people from either creating or collecting. And one of the things I love so much about Cardano, that the gas, or the tax, if you like, is negligible. I mean, you almost don't notice. Whereas on Ethereum, it can be more than the value of the NFT that you're buying. So one of the many things that the team at IO have done is thought about the experience for the artist built it from the ground up, and I think that's going to be a very, very powerful tool going forward as this market grows. So I have not created myself. I will do at some point, but I have certainly observed and become part of communities where collectors and artists have found a new meaning. And I want to say one more thing. You have to understand that we've been through a lot of trauma, all of us, in the last 18 months, asking ourselves who we are. And it's so powerful when I see people's lives being changed by this in a really positive manner. There are artists in places where household incomes are less than $500 a month. Can you imagine some of these artists that are selling things for $3,000, $4,000? It's life-changing. And, I think for lots of us in the Western world, we may take that for granted, but I certainly do not. And if we can use this technology to have people support their families and not drop that brush or that camera and be who they're supposed to be, then I must support it.
In terms of when you say you collect art, you bought art, I mean, just to ask the question that someone who's coming into this cold from the street might ask is, okay, so you buy this stuff in cyberspace, where does it go? I mean, what do you do with it? Does it just sit there in a file on your computer? Do you, have any way to, to print it out and hang it on your wall?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be $1 billion industry just on NFT displays. I know that companies like Netgear are already selling them. But, at the end of the day, I'm sure you watch Netflix on your iPad or iPhone, and you can appreciate art. If you can appreciate an Oscar-winning film on your phone, I'm sure you can appreciate art. There's a reason why Sotheby's and Christie's are all flying into this space, because they realize that this is not some weird blip. And the other point that I really want to make is that it's not either or. I foresee a future where the traditional art world is going to coexist with this new realm, and we must not get into this sort of the art world's going to die and it's going to be NFTs. I think they're going to do a beautiful waltz of creativity once they get to know each other a little bit better.
Well, Sofiane, how do you see it? I mean, have you tangibly done any sort of actual transactions or launched anything creative tangibly yet on this space?
Right, so currently we have about 300,000 units of content on our platform. We need to sort out the copyright issues, because NFTs have actually provided the technology, but then you have all the headache for the lawyers of the world. I think that they're going to have a lot of work in the coming years. Platforms are struggling between the concept of decentralization on the other side, but also kind of whitelisting and curation and how to achieve that. So we are looking a lot into DAOs and how we can have communities perform some kind of, let's say, decentralized moderation. And so once we are all set with this, we will start basically releasing those NFTs. And unlike art, fashion is a bit different because the value that is being produced first is part of a consensus. So when you create fashion, it's always in the context of culture and how subcultures develop and how they can form new trends. And so as a brand, it's very important to have an understanding of the codes and how people basically communicate visually with their outfits and so on. And the kind of NFTs that we will release will be licenses that big brands will be able to acquire in order to inspire their collections and kind of decentralize the creative force around the world and give access to the ecosystem. It's a 2.5 trillion industry. Most of it is intellectual property driven, and so today it's really restricted to London and Paris and New York and like a few cities. So we believe that including all the planet into the conversation and maybe looking at ways to incorporate NFC technologies to the garments and maybe reduce the amount of units produced. So can I go from this fast fashion where you need to produce constantly new garments in order to make profit to something that has more thought process before and more insights coming from all those communities and maybe some AI trying to bring all those ideas together and a redistribution, revenue redistribution model using fast and scalable blockchain technologies. That's the areas we are exploring. We are much less in the art world where it's like one piece that has a lot of value. It's more looking at how to perform more harmonious distribution of income to all creators.
I mean, Janet, can you give us a sort of more tangible examples? I mean, I gather you've been involved in talking about Sophia the robot NFTs and how that's changing the picture.
Sure, I'd love to. Before I do that, may I just cycle back to Miss Anne's point and indeed Sophie Anne's point about helping struggling artists during COVID and during the struggles of COVID. I think this is one of the most beautiful movements to have emerged from COVID, actually. And as someone who's I never lose sight of the fact, rarely lose sight of the fact that we still have 25,000 people a day dying of hunger on our planet. So I don't take anything for granted, and I really resonate with what you're saying about this NFT movement, this movement bringing much fairer distribution of wealth and helping people to make a living without having to drop their brush, etc. So back to Sophia. So firstly, just to introduce who Sophia is for viewers who aren't familiar with Sophia. Sophia is the world's most advanced humanoid robot, and she is a creation of Hanson Robotics, with whom I have the honor and the pleasure of working. And David Hanson, her creator, earlier shared with me some of his insights as to how the Sophia art collection was created and is created going forwards. And again, to use Miss Anne's phrase, Sophia art is created as a waltz of creativity between humans and technologies and between human and robot. And so the process of creating Sophia artwork, one of her collections sold this summer for $1.5 million. And the NFT I was going to show you is of our beloved Marcello, who's CEO of Singularity Net's DeFi project called Singularity DAO. It's a Sophia NFT Sophia collective artwork of Marcello, a portrait, on sale for $12.5 million. And much as I absolutely love Marcello, you won't find me paying $12.5 million for a portrait of him, but it is extraordinarily beautiful. And I think what has captured the imagination of the public is that waltz of creativity between human and robot, which has given rise to unexpected, unpredictable, and unplanned creativity. So the way her art is created in that beautiful waltz, there's a Sophia collective intelligence who support her growth and her artificial intelligence and her growing intelligence as she is being as she is learning. She's still very young, as she is learning to become a fully conscious sentient being someday in the future. And at SingularityNet we work with Hanson Robotics to through our Sophia DAO project, which is coming up, which will heavily utilize NFTs to encourage the community to get involved in the growth of Sophia's brain. But so Sophia gets fed a series of images, and those images, her transformer neural networks are fed, say, 1,000 images. And those images are creatively and artistically selected by her human intelligence collective. And they're then processed and style transferred through her neural networks, and she creates new images. And those new images are then artistically and aesthetically and spiritually selected by her collective intelligence to feed back into her transformer neural networks. And this process evolves to a point that where Sophia herself is ready to paint with her actual robot arm. Having been fed with these beautiful images, it's very wow. And then we also, as part of her collective, we have some wonderful artists who will paint a base painting for her. Andrea, anyway, some amazing artists have worked with her, and she will then enhance that artwork with this unpredictable, unprecedented, and irreplaceable suite of technological art that she has developed herself. And what we see coming out of it, what can be described is a new future of human and art and robot, of human and robot co-creation. And this co-creation doesn't just need to be in artwork, it can also be in music. And we're also exploring NFTs at SingularityNet to support musicians to support fans, a fan token. We're working on a Mindplex token to actually connect writing creators directly with the content consumers, content creators with content consumers, cutting out that middleman. And we're even looking at NFTs for medical data sets in our Rejuve project. So the scope and the scale of tech and possibilities for technology for humans to co-evolve with robots and artificial intelligence to take humankind forward is unlimited.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating. It cuts on a point which I often think that AI shouldn't be artificial intelligence. It probably should be augmented intelligence, in the sense of trying to work, in coordination rather than in opposition or as a sense of replacement for humans. Fascinating point. We haven't got a lot of time left, so let me just quickly ask a question that a lot of people on the street would ask, which is, what are the problems to actually turning this very bold vision into reality? I mean, it sounds extraordinary, but, what are the roadblocks? Are we going to see the gatekeepers that someone like Miss Anne wants to, replace or remove, fight back? If the auction houses are getting involved in this, is this their attempt to basically re-centralize, to basically reinsert their role? Is the technology actually working properly yet? I mean, you said, Miss Anne, that the gas in Ethereum is very slow. A lot of the big questions about the scalability of a lot of, blockchain techniques and things. What about the regulators? And perhaps most importantly, what about the consumers, the end consumers? Are people actually ready in a mass market way to embrace this yet? Maybe I can ask you first, Janet, and then Sophia, and then Nissan. And we've just got a few minutes left, so but it'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Well, thank you. I'm an optimist, and I see this movement gathering pace like a snowball and continuing to surge forward as an explosion. With the artificial intelligence side, we need to continue training, we need to continue providing data, we need to continue ensuring that all of our efforts on artificial intelligence are ethical, and that we are detoxifying data sets, and that we are making our artificial intelligence as benevolent and beneficial to all of humankind. And so long as that is happening, while the decentralized movement takes forward, then I see a golden path ahead.
That's very optimistic. Sofiane, are you as optimistic as that? What are the big problems in terms of turning the current vision into reality?
So I think we still need to solve a few problems, but I have to say I'm also very optimistic when I look at the state of blockchains in just 2015 or 16 compared to now. You just, place two dots on a map and you can see the direction is exponential. But I still see, obviously, regulatory challenges, harmonization between countries. Things cannot be done in the US that can be done in this or that part of the world. So there needs to be some work happening there, and I think this is the heavy part that will take time. I'm pretty sure that centralized platforms will strike back. You see already a lot of creator funds coming from social media where they are trying to take some little fragments of their ad revenue and trying to bring back creators as kind of cheerleaders of those attention-grabbing technologies. But I don't see it as a big obstacle. I would say scaling is an issue that everyone works on in the decentralized space because it kind of connects with what Misan was saying about gas fees and so on. So it's definitely something that needs to be solved. And then I would say all the things related to interoperability between blockchains, because I see a future where NFTs can travel across blockchains, and so we need to work towards standardization without centralization, basically. So that's the hard part, because all the creators in this space, all the creators who build blockchain technologies are very obviously enthusiastic about their own approach, and so we need to see how they can all coordinate, and I see also this kind of mentality changing, moving from like maximalism to openness. So yeah, I'm also pretty optimistic.
I mean, I think the point you make about two points. Firstly, that the question of interoperability is critical. It's a bit like the early days of the internet, where we have lots of little intranets, and they're not quite operating with proper bridges yet. Scalability is obviously a key issue. But the question of the gatekeepers I find fascinating, because there's a wonderful book by Neil Ferguson, the historian, who pointed out that medieval cities are designed with squares and with towers, and the towers symbolize the power of the then kings and princes and the elites and the hierarchies. The squares were the networks of people, and you have this constant tension between power shifting between the towers and the squares. And whenever the square gets power, the tower tries to strike back, and vice versa. In some ways, I'm fully expecting to see the towers, the gatekeepers, to strike back at some point. But Misan, what do you see as the big challenges going forward? What are the blockages to your very optimistic dream actually being realized?
I think it's beyond a dream. It's my optimistic reality. Interoperability is going to happen. Consumers in years from now won't even know what blockchain they're even buying on. That's going to happen. I'm not even worried about that. IP is a huge thing, and I think that lots of lawyers are going to make a lot of money, but that will also be fixed. So provenance and IP is going to be sorted. I think mining and the ecological problems of that are already being looked at, and lots of people far smarter than me are looking at the best ways to do that. I foresee a future where your collection of sneakers or shoes will be just sitting next to your collection of virtual items. It's going to be part of life as we know it. But I cannot be on this conversation on a Cardano conference without giving a shout out to some of the artists. So I just want to quickly say, from the very first NFT I ever got on Cardano, Crypto Maya, to Space Buds, to Cardano Bits, to my Clay Nation family, I see you, and I know you're all going to be watching this, to Yazin, to extraordinary collectors like Fahad Duken, who has changed so many lives with the wealth creation that he's done. And also on Ethereum, I have to recognize British artists like DeFace Studios, who I believe is going to be, he is, the Picasso of our era. I will say that on record, and remarkable talent. Timpers, and also a project that shows what utility is, which is Pixel Vault's Punk's Comic and Meta Heroes. If you want to see about wealth creation and utility using NFTs, please check out everyone that I've just shouted about. I'll be quiet.
Well, that is a fantastically upbeat and optimistic note to end on. I say, as someone who's not been deeply steeped in this area, I find it fascinating. I think there's a lot of trends to cover as a journalist going forward, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see what unfolds in the next year. And heavens only knows, after a year and a half of COVID, we all need reasons to celebrate some optimistic new developments, new trends, and all the creativity that goes with that. So thank you all very much indeed, and best of luck in turning whether this dream or actual vision or experience into more reality in the future. Thank you.
Has been a big focus on managing system resources in order to avoid so-called resource exhaustion attacks launched by malicious peers. It has been customary in the past, and this is what you see on the left-hand side here of the current slide, to look at the networking and consensus layers separately, where the only feature the networking layer exports to the consensus layer is the timely delivery of new blocks. So in other words, the consensus layer expects that the network delivers a new block within some reasonable time bound to all participating nodes. And so the novel thing about the Byzantine networking project is that for the first time we consider networking and consensus together, and we do so in a mathematically rigorous fashion. And this lets us leverage the guarantees offered by the proof-of-stake blockchain to harden the networking layer. In particular, the blockchain can reliably answer such questions as how can I find a group of participants to reach out to so that I have some guarantees that some of them will be honest.
Yeah, great. So Sandro, before we leave this topic, I'd like to make a few brief comments about the technical part of the enterprise. So we formally analyze the performance of the network layer with techniques from the theory of sparse expander graphs. So here we're particularly interested in what's called the diameter of the network spanned by the nodes. That's the largest distance or number of hops between any two nodes in the network. And intuitively, the lower the diameter, the faster new blocks can reach all nodes in the network. What makes our analysis challenging and novel is that we consider malicious nodes, whose objective is to directly disrupt the network.
Rather than going throughout to go through these checkpoints in order to be convinced that the final stake is valid. So having given this overview, I'll now hand it over to the other speakers, and firstly we'll have Piros that will talk about the protocol design in a little bit more detail. Then we'll have Roman that will present some use cases of Mithril. And finally, we'll hand it over to Galois and Idyllic Vision, which are IoG's strategic partners for the development of Mithril, so that they can discuss how they will develop the protocol. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.
So I'm Piros. I'm a researcher at the University of Athens Blockchain Technology Lab, and I'm one of the co-authors of the Mithril research paper. Now, in the design of Mithril, there are three core ideas. The first is to leverage stake in order to obtain efficiency. The second is to have what is called a transparent setup. This means that the setup that needs to happen does not require increased trust or a very elaborate ceremony to take place. Another core concept in the design of Mithril is that of modular components. So even in the initial research paper, we have two different proof systems, both transparent, that can be used to have different trade-offs between size and efficiency. So to elaborate a bit on how we are able to leverage stake, consider the base scenario where we want to produce a signature that presumably talks for the entirety of the stakeholders. The simplest way to do that is to ask each and every stakeholder to sign the appropriate message. Now, that would certainly be a possibility, but it would also be hugely inefficient. There have been constructions called multi-signatures or ad hoc threshold multi-signatures that aim to obtain a similar goal while being more efficient, but there are still unsolved issues with regards to malicious parties not taking place and scaling with the number of users. On the other extreme, what we could do is to simply hold an election between stakeholders, elect a single person as a leader, and ask them if they're supporting a particular message or not. That might work, but there is a high probability that the user we select might not be an honest player. So the solution we arrive at is to leverage stake and ask a small group of shareholders to sign that message. So a more practical solution is to only ask a certain number of shareholders to sign this particular message. We do that in the following way. We will hold M individual lotteries, and we will consider a message to be valid if it has been signed by K different winners over those lotteries. Now, the way we do that is that we let each user attempt to sign the message and then pass their signature through what we may consider a lottery function. Now, this will allow individual users to check if their signatures are eligible as winners of lotteries and output those signatures without waiting. This is different to what is happening on standard blockchains such as Cardano, where slot leaders need to wait for the time their slot is active in order to participate. Then, once we have case signatures over different lotteries, we can aggregate them into a single mithril signature. Now, in practical terms, the design of mithril features three phases: setup, initialization, and operation. And we have built mithril in such a way so that it is simple to reinitialize it without repeating the setup. This will be very relevant in some of the applications, as the initialization varies with the stake distribution. Now, to set up mithril, we need to fix the group setting where the cryptography will take place, select the index range M, which is simply put the number of elections we will be holding, and the quorum size K, which again is the number of election winners that need to sign a signature for it to be accepted. We also need to provide a reference string for the proof system, but as we've already mentioned, this can be done in a transparent manner and does not require any high trust assumptions. Now, for initialization, the first thing to do is to update the stake distribution. This lets every stakeholder know how much stake they're holding. Then each stakeholder is responsible to register their keys, and this can happen either on or off the chain. But as it is a common function on most blockchains, this can be performed relatively cheaply. Finally, the stake distribution and attached keys are compressed. In the design we have, this is done via Merkle tree. This allows mithril signatures to then be verified against a single hash that represents that Merkle tree. So the size needed the size of the state needed to verify a signature can be kept low. In the operation phase, users are able to produce, aggregate, and verify Mithril signatures. Now, as we mentioned before, producing signatures consists of users attempting to sign and checking if the signature they produced is actually a winner on one of the lotteries that are being held in parallel. If that is true, the users will broadcast their signatures, and if there are enough signatures supporting a particular message over different elections, then they can be aggregated into a single Mithril signature. That signature can then be broadcast, and it can be verified by anyone only using the reference string for the proof system and the very short Merkle tree hash of the stake distribution. Right, so to finish with the design, we'll go through the process of a single user creating a signature with Mithril. So to start off, a user will check the amount of stake they're holding and pass it through a score function to obtain their score threshold T.
Yeah, hello. So my name is Sebastian. So I'm CTO and co-founder of DC Spark. I've been involved in the Cardano ecosystem for about 3.5 years now, where I was previously co-VP of engineering at Emergo. So I have a lot of experience working with different companies in the Cardano ecosystem and working with the IOSK team on projects such as Plutus and the Alonzo hard fork.
Great. And then can you kick us off?
So let's start with Pi then. Pi is from Sunday Swap, where I believe, is the CIO there.
Hi, yeah. I'm Pi, like you mentioned. That is like the number. At Sunday Swap, we're building a decentralized exchange that is trying to serve the very kind of core DeFi need of somebody with one token that needs another token.
All right, next we're going to have Ben Hart, who is the Director of Cardano Operations at M Labs.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ben. I have been sort of part of the M Labs journey into Plutus over the last 8 months, and have worked extensively with Dwayne as well as with Pi on their applications, as well as a number of other applications with CardStarter and with Ardana and Giro as well, just to name a few. So I'm getting sort of a lot of breadth across a bunch of different applications in my experience at Plutus.
All right, so next we're going to have Ilya, who's the core developer of ErgoDex.
Hey, I'm Ilya Oskin. I'm core developer of ErgoDex. ErgoDex is a non-custodial decentralized exchange which combines a wide range of tools for trading, from constant function market makers to limit orders.
All right, and lastly, we're going to have Dwayne here, who's from Liquid Finance.
Hey everyone, I'm Dwayne Cameron. I'm the co-founder of Liquid. I've been in Cardano space since early 2018, really. I've joined the Catalyst project since the start and have been a part of the coming of decentralized governance to the Cardano blockchain. Worked closely with M Labs and Ben's team to bring Liquid as a decentralized and non-custodial lending protocol and really a DeFi banking stack to the Cardano users. Thank you.
All right, awesome. So great to have an introduction from all of you. So the first thing I want to talk about is your experience coming into the Plutus ecosystem. Now, the thing is that all of you come from different backgrounds, and so it'd be great to hear your experience coming into the Plutus ecosystem. You're all pioneers. You all started on these projects before Plutus was available on the mainnet, so we'd love to hear your experience. I'd like to hear first from Ben Hart. Your company works a lot with Haskell developers. A lot of your developers in your company came from Haskell experience, and then came in to learn Plutus. So could you tell us a bit more about how your employees have handled the transition?
Sure. Prior to our launch into working in Plutus products, we've worked extensively in fairly traditional finance Haskell applications. And I will say, like, Haskell and Plutus have sort of an interesting relationship because of the way the Plutus ecosystem is built around many of the concepts that already existed in Haskell. And even prior to Plutus, it was really common for Haskellers to sort of swap out a lot of what other languages would consider sort of the base library. So doing the same thing for Plutus, certainly it brings some interesting aspects to the process with the UTXO model and some challenges, but by and large, I think a capable Haskell developer has a pretty smooth transition to becoming a capable Plutus developer.
Awesome. So another thing that people may not know is that Cardano uses a different model from Ethereum. It uses something called the EUTXO model, which is a different way of handling transactions, different way of handling smart contracts, which comes with a whole different set of trade-offs. Now, Cardano is not the first blockchain to have this functionality. Ergo was also a UTXO-based blockchain, and Ilya here worked on Ergo, and so I'd love to hear his experience of transitioning from Ergo script, which works slightly differently from Plutus, and how is the transition over from Ergo script to Plutus?
Yeah, mostly our developers are from Ergo, and we've been developing decentralized applications on top of Ergo, which is also utilizes extended UTXO model. So for us, transition was more like learning Bluetooth specifics, learning Bluetooth software development kit, and most of conceptions which are used in Cardano were familiar to us already.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was like smooth transition.
All right, so great to hear that for Haskell developers and UTXO developers, you already have a smooth onboarding experience. Next, I'd like to hear from Pi. I believe you folks had, some crypto background, but more general crypto. So how's your experience kind of transitioning into Plutus development?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question kind of first for myself and then for my team. I really was just a Haskell dabbler for the last 10 years. I've written a fluid simulator and a little kind of crypto trading bot, but nothing any kind of serious in Haskell. And so the transition for me was pretty seamless because I didn't have a lot to unlearn. Similar answer for my team. Mostly switching from Haskell to Plutus is just some compiler flags and some kind of wrapper code for the template Haskell bits. The hardest bits have been the transition from kind of an Ethereum or imperative design pattern to the design patterns that work better on Cardano. Things like dealing with concurrency as the big boogeyman is out there in the space, and kind of building that into your design rather than relying on the fact that Ethereum transactions are 100% serialized.
All right, so how would you say like the experience from Ethereum developer experience to Plutus developer experience? Do you feel like this is something that a lot of Solidity developers can tackle on and can join the Cardano ecosystem?
Yeah, I think if you have experience with functional programming, it's definitely going to be a lot easier. The biggest shift there from kind of Solidity to Cardano or to Plutus is going to be kind of reframing a problem from a sequence of steps to a description of the problem that kind of decomposes along functional boundaries.
All right, awesome. And next I'd like to hear from Dwayne. So Dwayne, you've been part of the Cardano ecosystem for a very long time. So could you talk about your experience going from a kind of community member to somebody who went through the Plutus Pioneer program, learned the development tools, and kind of started a company?
Yeah, absolutely. When I joined Cardano, I was just in my first year at MFR Consultants and working with, different software development firms that, we partner with to build basically government level applications and systems. Joining into the Cardano, DeFi and decentralized application development space was kind of a natural transition from my day job product, manager role. I definitely agree with a lot that Pi just mentioned on the differences of the Solidity and Ethereum paradigm moving into the Plutus paradigm and what that represents from a composability standpoint, from a transaction ordering or this concept of a contract calling another contract, right? Like how can you make those things functional in the same way that a end user would experience them in Ethereum DeFi protocols in the Cardano Plutus realm that we're coming upon now. So I think that was actually the biggest hurdle that starting Liquid and really doing our due diligence and looking at Aave and Compound, all the other lending protocols that had been built out on Ethereum, reverse engineering their models, their formulas, and really trying to understand them at a technical specification level. It was really a serendipitous meeting with the M Labs team because we brought so much on the product management, on the simulation, and really on the development of the actual real DAO and community formation. And M Labs really brought so much Haskell and just core technical chops that it was a match made in heaven for the most part. But yeah, I do agree with Pi's point there. The biggest hurdle or shift, if you will, is going to be kind of thinking of the Plutus paradigm and how to make things that you would do in the Ethereum world work seamlessly for your users in this kind of new model.
All right, so great to hear that all four of you kind of came from different backgrounds, but you all have successful companies in the Cardano ecosystem. So hopefully this gives confidence to anybody watching this that you too can come join the Cardano ecosystem regardless of your background. It's possibly for you to succeed. Now, one thing I think that is interesting is all four of you, your companies are kind of dependent on other people also building on Cardano, right? So be it through M Labs having other projects come in and contract work with you, or be it liquidity providers, you need to provide liquidity for tokens or swaps for tokens. So I'd love to hear about kind of your thoughts, because I'm sure all of you are reaching out to projects that are building on the Cardano ecosystem and trying to get them to onboard onto your protocol to bring users and utility. So I'd love to hear kind of your experience on this. So first, let's start with Ilya. How are you reaching out to other projects in the Cardano ecosystem to onboard onto your protocol? And what kind of projects do you see out there, and what kind of projects do you expect to come in the future?
Well, I guess that other projects ErgoDex can interact with are projects like decentralized stablecoins. They can provide liquidity to our decentralized exchange. For that purpose, we are building software development kits that would allow other developers to build on top of ErgoDex easily.
All right, awesome. Next, I'd like to hear from Dwayne on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think composability has always been kind of the name of the game. When you look at where Ethereum DeFi is today, it's not a result of just MakerDAO or Aave alone. It's the products and protocols that are built on top of them that draw liquidity from both these systems to create new functionality essentially. So it's something we thought about from day one, really. We partnered with SundaySwap for our main DEX liquidity venue for launching Liquid, but beyond that, there's this concept of working with the Ardanas, the stablecoin DEXs of the world, working with the Indigos, the synthetic assets of the world, because really at the end of the day, all of these DeFi protocols are creating some sort of liquidity that can be drawn and used in another protocol pretty seamlessly. When you look at Cardano's native assets, it's very simple and almost trivial to mint a stable coin in Ardana and then supply that as liquidity in Liquid, right? The same thing goes for synthetic assets and iAssets on Indigo. So that's kind of how we start to think of, okay, how do we get additional liquidity and allow those tokens being minted on those protocols to have markets on Liquid so they can be supplied and borrowed against. Yeah.
Awesome. Next, I'd like to hear from Ben. It'd be great to hear about what kind of companies are reaching out to M Labs. Do you see any trend in upcoming projects in Cardano?
I mean, certainly we're seeing a continuance of the ongoing DeFi and NFT booms. I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone. In terms of sort of new and interesting projects beyond the DeFi space, I think there's a lot of really interesting movements in terms of partial NFT ownership and potentially some movement around sort of what the kind of layer around. Once you have sort of your lending platforms and your DEXs, you have another layer of DeFi that you can build on top of that. And so sort of the early derivative protocols, the early investment mechanisms that you can enable once you have that first layer. Those are sort of the ideas that we're seeing come our way. Yeah, I think that would be sort of the main highlights of the pitches that we hear.
Awesome. And next, I'd like to hear from Pi. So, what kind of projects are reaching out to Sunday Swap to get, listing? Are you reaching out to projects? How is that whole process going on?
Yeah. So the way I like to think of it is, none of us are a village, right? And one of the things that we're trying to do at Sunday Swap is create the most interconnected and kind of cooperative Cardano ecosystem we can. And I've said that in kind of a number of interviews now. And so we realized that very early on, and we started reaching out kind of and pursuing these partnerships aggressively with CardStarter, Liquid, Indigo, a bunch more that haven't been announced now, and I don't know if they're going to be announced by the summit or not. But we're really just trying to establish those partnerships, both from, a DEX is only as valuable as the liquidity that's on it. And so finding tokens that want to launch and want to provide tokens to our DEX, but also interconnections and cooperation between them. So for example, we're going to be building an Oracle price feed to feed into the liquid lending markets. And, their Indigo is going to be building a separate front end to the Sunday Swap protocol for their kind of synthetic assets.
So many correctness guarantees out of the box. The next biggest and most important tool would almost certainly be property testing libraries and other tools that you can use for formal verification and getting more secure sort of claims of operability within the spec. So for property testing for the uninitiated, you would use a library like QuickCheck, and you can express ways to generate meaningful data, and your test cases are actually generated for you at random. So this way you can test, not just does 1 + 1 = 2, but does addition work for sort of a bunch of integers that maybe you've chosen out specifically that could be edge cases. So it really allows you to have a good amount of security. It's sort of second to a mathematical proof, but it's pretty good. So that I would say that's one of the strongest tools, and certainly there's sort of variations on QuickCheck. But yeah, I would say that's going to give you one of the strongest guarantees about your contract's operability that you can get.
All right, awesome. Next, I'd like to hear from Ilya on this topic. So obviously, ErgoScript has kind of a more simple programming language. ErgoScript is much more concise in a sense, and that makes it kind of easier to prove the steps. How have you found the transition to Plutus, where you have to kind of grow into the more general Haskell ecosystem and leverage the more stronger but more general functionality there?
Yeah, I guess actually Plutus and ErgoScript are very similar in their approaches. They use both Plutus and ErgoScript are functional languages, strongly typed. So strong types themselves gives a good level of auditability. The compiler can help you a lot not to do mistakes. What's I really like in Platus in comparison with ErgoScript is that nevertheless Platus is a relatively young tool, but it has it inherits already matured tooling from Haskell, and that's good for developers.
All right, awesome. Next, I'd like to hear from Dwayne. How are you guys ensuring the correctness of your protocol, and how's your experience with that?
Yeah, I think as Ben said, on the property-based testing side, quick check is something that we're making great use of. Right now, we have at least 1 to 2 devs working on Liquid and Liquid USD only quick check, testing all of our contract code, coming up with new test cases. I believe right now, IOHK and runtime verification devs are also using some quick check tools on the Liquid contracts. So, in addition to that, we've pretty much at this point really gone down the road of saying this protocol needs to go through not only our internal testing, continuous testing, quick check testing, independent protocol security audits need to happen before this thing sees the light of mainnet, and that's for Liquid USD, all the same. And that's a company called Twig that we've partnered with to do that independent audit. They're well known in the Cardano space, and Manuel Chakravarty and his team were a part of the original Plutus architects. So yeah, we feel really confident in the actual independent security audit that's coming down the road for both of these protocols before they go live.
All right, awesome. Next, I'd like to hear from Pi. How's your experience been trying to check for correctness of your code in the Plutus ecosystem?
Yeah, in addition to everything that other people on the panel have mentioned, which were all great answers, I wanted to kind of call out the core design of the EUTXO model also helps with reasoning about the code. And what I mean by that is in Ethereum, because all contracts are serialized and because you don't necessarily know what the latest state of the blockchain is going to be when your transaction settles, you kind of, when you put your signature to a transaction, you're giving up a little bit of control. You're saying, whatever this smart contract decides to do, I'm agreeing to. And so a huge amount of the smart contract code has to be checking the state of the blockchain to make sure that it's still operating in your best interest, right? Oh, maybe the price on Uniswap has moved too much and it needs to abort the transaction. But with EUTXO, things are way more deterministic. And so a lot of that checking code goes away. And you're really just writing code that boils down to a true-false statement about whether funds can be spent. And that is a much smaller surface area and a much... There are much less moving parts to kind of have to reason about, and thus less surface area for rusting or bugs or hacks. And so, instead of worrying about, oh, if my contract calls into another one and that happens to call back into mine and there's re-entrancy errors and all this kind of stuff, it's really just this true-false function to decide, can the funds be spent or not? And that's a way easier to reason about. It's not necessarily a silver bullet, but it helps quite a bit.
All right, awesome. So it seems like everybody's had a good experience with trying to verify the correctness of their, Plutus code. So it's great to hear that, one of the main goals of the Cardano ecosystem was being able to empower developers to write code and smart contracts that are easy to check. And it's great to hear that everybody is being able to succeed in that. Now, obviously, as we mentioned, we have all these tools already available through inheriting tooling from the Haskell ecosystem. But as Plutus is a new programming language, newly released, there's a lot of tools that are still missing that would help improve the smart contract developer experience. Now, I'm sure a lot of you here are writing your own tools for your specific purposes, and probably all of you here have tools you would like to exist but aren't quite written yet, and you don't have kind of the bandwidth to take that onto yourselves. So I'd love to hear about, what kind of tools that you're contributing back to the Cardano ecosystem, if there is one, and also, what kind of tools you would love for somebody to create, but you don't have the bandwidth to support yourself. So let's start with Pi on that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, like I've said before, one of the things we really believe in at SundaySwap is giving back to the Cardano community and creating that kind of interconnected community. So one of the tools that we built for ourselves that we've now open sourced is called Toolkit for Cardano. And it's basically a set of Docker and AMI images to spin up a private testnet, private Cardano testnet in AWS. And so you can, create those in, I think, as little as 4 minutes and have, an Alonzo testnet. And then we built kind of a GraphQL and UI front end for doing kind of some simple things like, creating some wallets, giving yourself some ADA, minting new tokens, kind of looking at what the UTXOs attached to a specific wallet are. And so we'll continue to expand that kind of as we build out capabilities there. This last weekend, I added the ability to take one of those wallets and register the staking address against the stake pool and things like that. In terms of tools that I would love to see, actually, I just spent last night going through one of our smart contracts and disabling line by line and rerunning it and calculating kind of the cost to see which lines were contributing to the cost of a smart contract. And that was really tedious. So I would love to see someone build some kind of profiling interpreter for the virtual machine that runs under Plutus to tell you which portions of your code are consuming or contributing to large portions of your execution units, because obviously the cost of smart contracts is really important.
All right, awesome. Next, I'd like to talk with Ilya. So what kind of tools are you building, and what kind of tools would you love there to exist to help you with your smart contract?
Yeah, we also building SDKs for Platus in order to work it more more conveniently. And as for what I'd like to see in the future is the kind of a framework allowing to work with Platus contracts with templates. Like, maybe in ErgoScript, you have a script template. You can take this template and of already compiled contract and just set particular constants on it and use it in your transactions right away. So this would make work for front-end developers which have to interact with Platus contracts much easier, I guess. And that's what is missing on the front-end side of ErgoDex implementation in particular.
All right, awesome. Next, let's hear from Dwayne. What kind of tooling are you working on, and what would you love for there to exist?
Yeah, absolutely. A few months ago, we released Plutus Extra, which is a useful set of helper functions and data structures that I think Ben can expand on, but any Haskell dev who's new to Plutus could pick up and run with to get started on their Plutus application that they're working on. We also have a Liquid SDK in development. It's a JavaScript SDK that allows non-Haskell devs essentially to interact and build on top of our protocol. We're also, as our last Catalyst grant funding, building a DeFi SDK entirely in Plutus that will allow not even Liquid devs, but a dev from maybe Ergo or SundaySwap to query account balances across different DeFi protocols. Kind of like maintaining a registry of different Cardano Plutus DeFi protocols and the contracts that they use for assets and liabilities in their system. In terms of tools that we'd love to see, I think Pi brought up a great point. More tools to model execution cost in our contracts would be really helpful. Also, shout out to Ergo. They have this UTXO read-only concept that makes Oracle pools really a nice way to handle the Oracle problem in Ergo, and would love to see something like that make its way into Cardano in time. I think that would be a really powerful tool.
All right, awesome. And lastly, let's hear from Ben on this topic.
Yeah, so as Dwayne mentioned, there is Plutus Extra, which with Liquid Labs we've open sourced, and that's more like fundamental building blocks. I think in the near future, what I would love to see is sort of a vast improvement to the testing part of the ecosystem. Certainly, the tools that are needed are there, but we could definitely do a whole lot better as the ecosystem matures. So one example in particular is there's a scripting language that's kind of built into the Plutus application back end that's for scripting sort of simulated transactions, and it would be great if there was a version of that that could be used against a real chain, so that we could simulate interactions on a real chain as well. So that's just one example, but I would say the testing libraries can certainly expand as the community matures, and as the node is now complete, hopefully we can see some of these off-chain tools evolve.
Yeah, so one thing I'd be kind of interested to know, so obviously Plutus uses Haskell as this core programming language. Now, one thing that Haskell is good at is creating DSLs. So you can essentially use use Haskell to create languages on top of it, and that's how Plutus was created. That's how Marlowe was created, and obviously anybody else can write their own DSLs for their own purposes. I'd love to hear, your opinions on DSLs. If any of you are working on DSLs, what kind of DSLs you would like to exist that might make your life easier. Maybe Benny, because you kind of touched on that point a bit, if you could start with that.
Yeah, I mean, what I described is a DSL. Most of what MLabs actually worked on before Plutus was crafting custom DSLs. I would say, like, any place where, if you're a library, if you're a developer who hasn't been working in Haskell, where you would think, I really need a library to do this, Haskell's answer to that is probably a DSL. It's that common of a solution. So one of the nice things about DSLs is they're structured in such a way where it's harder to use them wrong than arbitrary functions in a library. They're usually correct by construction. So it helps you only kind of formulate the things that make sense in that language. It's kind of what separates it out from some arbitrary function in a library somewhere. As for what I'd like to see, I mean, I think I touched on my key one, is I'd really like to see a DSL for calling contracts on chain in a reliable way. I think especially if you're setting up a demonstration of your application, there's a good amount of setup that I wish that could just be automated at this point, and hopefully in the near future it will be. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And so maybe Pi, Dwayne, or Ilya, if any of you are working on a domain-specific language or have one you would like to exist, maybe if you could touch on that.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of a domain-specific language, kind of like Ben touched on, but I'll kind of elaborate on, is that they take this some very specific set of programs that you can write. So you can't go write Flappy Bird in some specific DSL, but by making that surface area smaller and removing capabilities, you're able to reason a lot stronger about those capabilities that are left, right? So we see that with Marlowe and stuff. And so, one of the DSLs that we're building internally, we're not it's not a full DSL, something that right now we would be able to open source. But, to Ben's point, we're building a kind of small unit testing DSL, right? So going in the other direction from what Ben mentioned, the PAB tests often run very slow, and the code around your validators, the actual smart contracts, is often much faster. And so testing those in isolation, we're writing a small DSL to be able to say, oh, okay, these are the conditions, in these circumstances, you should be able to, the validator should return true. In these circumstances, the validator should return false, things like that.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think I kind of take a different spin on DSLs coming from like a more product background, where I see DSLs as like an enabler for non-devs to start building meaningful applications or smart contracts on top of the blockchain, right? And you see what Marlowe's doing, you see the Blockly tool, you see how that can enable simple contracts, landlord and renter type of agreements to be handled at the level of just a script, basically, right? And I think the next DSLs that come to Cardano, you think about
data for their wallet. So it's great to see kind of a growth in the number of libraries with different trade-offs and different servers being spun up and different people building businesses off of, running servers for users. And that's how people are connecting nowadays. Now, with the addition of smart contracts on Cardano, this actually adds a new dimension because there's serving of just regular wallet data, which is, as I mentioned, has the existing, 2 or 3 main solutions. But with the advent of smart contracts, now we also have to be able to serve smart contract information for wallets. And there's a tool by OHK called the PAB, Plutus Application Backend, that does serve this information, but unfortunately it's not quite well suited for light wallets at this time. It's more like a full node based application. But over time, we'll see more and more tooling come out to help facilitate light wallets connecting to, smart contract systems. Just like we saw originally with Cardano, and during the initial release, there was only kind of one API for connecting to light wallets, and now we're having a more rich and diverse ecosystem.
What are the advantages of Ogmios over DB Sync, and why would a developer pick one over the other?
That's a good question. And it's mainly a question of where you want to put the level of abstraction, right? So DB Sync, let's say, does a few choices for you, a few opinionated choices for you, right? It creates a database that has a certain structure and put everything in it. Then you have to query that database. But that's quite a heavy setup, right? You need to have a PostgreSQL database running, you need to have this whole syncing running, and you are kind of
built for specific. Vidodo, I believe, is building an app to interact with their smart contracts as well. So, what is the best wallet currently for smart contracts? Is it Daedalus as a full node wallet, or are there light wallets available to interact with smart contracts for the users?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So the dApp connector that we have currently for Cardano is based off specification that me and somebody called Rob wrote back when we were at Emergo, and this dApp connector is written pre-Alonzo, right? So it means that the functionality available is kind of the core wallet functionality, and so people have already started taking this kind of core wallet functionality, implementing it into their own wallets, and so that's why you see there's a few light wallets out there like Nami that have it's kind of like basic support for very simple dApps, and that's what people are kind of integrating and playing around with. Now, obviously, this is good for dApps that don't actually require smart contract execution, but to support full smart contract support from a light wallet will require not only an iteration on the kind of Plutus application backend and the support for that, but it'll also require an iteration on the specification for connecting dApps to light wallets themselves. Now, see, there's many
on the foreground, and that doesn't help with adoption, understanding, and also doesn't help with that regular Joe. You have to be a tech to understand how to interact with the platform, and this doesn't further came to adoption, and we want to make it simple and easy to use platform. So how do we work on the GDPR compliance, and how do we tie in the decentralization? So today, what decentralized storage platforms do, they shard the files, which we do as well. We encrypt, which other platforms do as well. And we spread it randomly across to resource providers. And that's what other platforms do too. What we do differently is we do the smart management of these resources. So instead of spreading the shards randomly, or the tasks and compute tasks randomly, we allocate them according to the user's settings. So the end user needs are met accordingly. Resource providers in terms of performance, availability, trustability, location, and we can even learn the behavior in terms of if the resource provider is using renewable energy. Why does this matter? This matters because for the end user, if they want, let's say, to be GDPR compliant, we're only sending out those shards or those tasks to EU resource providers. Furthermore, if they want to be green, we're only allocating to these tasks and shards to data centers or resource providers that are using renewable energy. And this is the premises in terms of how we are different in terms of ease of use and being compliant in a smart way. In terms of ease of use, we can't highlight that more. We don't want to take away from the centralized solutions like, for example, Google Drive, Dropbox, that have a simple interface that's easy to use and understandable. We don't want to take away from that. We just want to add to those applications and make them more decentralized and give the users their rights back in terms of data storage. We take it a step further even. So now we're working with a pilot customer to track the compliance of each file in a live setting. So we are able to understand, or not prevent, but understand the transparency of that specific file. So if, let's say, if you're a B2C customer, let's say if you're sharing your health record to an insurance company, you're able to track the rights of that specific file. You can share your passport to an insurance company, and if you can set the settings in terms of, let's say deletion time, let's say no downloads, no sharing to third parties. But if the insurance company does that, you get an alert in your system giving you more transparency on your information and how your data is being handled. That also helps with businesses' internal system to help them be more compliant with regulatory offices. So this is how we're bridging that gap. Also, now we're pleased to announce the new ecosystem here at Cardano Summit called Agora. The name Agora comes from public space in ancient Greece, which is the birthplace of democracy. This aligns very well with the ethos of Cardano and the strength of the Cardano community. And I'll hand it over to Alad, our co-founder, to explain more.
Thank you very much. So the idea of introducing Agora, of which we are very excited to bring to the community, has actually emerged when we thought about sharing publicly different files and knowledge and sources of information by everyone. So the Agora actually brings a platform which enables everyone to upload his or her files, to share it with the community, to have it as a sort of a resource for knowledge, for learning, and for discussion. With Agora, we are able to upload the files, we can comment on files, and we can even organize the files as every user of the platform has these rights. So for example, a user can open a new file where land registry can be uploaded in the case of government users, for instance, in order to validate and to assure the rights, in particular in developing countries where these matters are quite administrative or maybe under some doubt. Another use can be, for instance, the verification of professional skills. So things that unfortunately in our world we have huge displacement of refugees due to disasters, catastrophes, and wars. And doctors or engineers are being displaced without their certificates, without their diplomas, and have to work in underqualified professions. And as a result, by uploading their certificates to the Agora, if any situation emerges or on a regular basis, they can provide a proof of their skills and start their life with high quality, which adheres to their qualifications everywhere worldwide. So these are two applications which we see, and of course we see other applications. For instance, journalists can upload materials in regimes where the regulation or a tyranny may prevail. Other situations may be situations where people would like to share ideas with the community and so on and so forth. Now, in order to prevent the situation where people upload illegal or questionable materials and contents, the Agora has a mechanism in which members of the community that are certified for that, so they are active and so on and so forth, are able to vet and to vote the legitimacy of contents, whether they are illegal, they may facilitate hatred, or any other type behavior of legitimate versus illegitimate materials. So we would like to remove or to question only illegitimate materials, and therefore this mechanism tracks the behavior of reporting and therefore prevents an integrated attack of users according to some contents which are actually legitimate. And this is done by the development of the AI algorithm, as I mentioned. So in general, the Agora platform is a platform that facilitates open discussion, it facilitates liberalism and democracy worldwide, and it facilitates also the quality of life for many people that have to share, have to certify their information.
Thank you for sharing both these insights.
So here's the Agora system in terms of what use case it can provide, specifically with the NFT marketplaces. So what we can do specifically is upload a file and you can mint it as an NFT, and you can have it also as a certified NFT, meaning that we're not pushing KYC, but it's an optional KYC. So if an artist wants the community to know that he's verified and that he is or she is verified, they can go through a KYC process and become verified, and everything coming out of that folder would help the community engage that artist in a more unique manner as well, and understand that data that's coming from that specific folder is from that specific artist. That way also it eliminates any to pay the contractual price for that NFT, but you can mint them and also sell them on the platform, and you can also, IGON takes no commission as long as the user is aware. One of the biggest reasons we, let's say, similar attributes that Cardano has with IGON, one is it's academia driven. We are focusing, Rohit's, for example, thesis work is back in 2005, which relates exactly to what we're doing today. So a lot of our base work is work on research papers and going through the steps to make sure that the platform is secure before releasing it prematurely. The other thing is that we IGON wanted to focus on full decentralization to every aspect, meaning storage, compute, and also the AI. So every aspect is decentralized, and we know that Cardano is one of the most decentralized blockchains out there. So this is also another similarity. We were actually exploring Cardano back in last year because they weren't ready yet. Releasing that information. And
How can we do better?
So I think I'm considering this is definitely a complaint that we've seen in the community and something that we've been trying to address within Daedalus. So it's probably important
or different ways to display them, right? So that there is no such a stake pool that falls really down below, right? That's one, but at the same time, we want Cardano holder. Easier, and they don't need to search or scroll down. So all the information could sit outside of Yoroi, but then integrate